What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Worst Favorite Record. I am Jason, the host of the show, and today I am joined by a very special guest, Chris Fafalios from Punchline, bass player. He also hosts a great podcast called One Hit Thunder, which I've been binging over the last couple of days. Welcome to the show.
Nice. Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So I was looking at your Instagram, and I see you've got some like side project bands, it looks like, and maybe you don't classify them that way, and other podcasts that you produce. So you just want to tell people everything that you've got going on?
Sure. I do a lot of things. First and foremost, my life's work is my band Punchline that I've been in for close to 26 years now. We have a ton of albums. We've done a lot of stuff. And we actually, for Punchline, speaking of podcasts, have a podcast called A Band Called Punchline, which is a super produced documentary style podcast about our band. Even if you don't know the band Punchline, I think you'll enjoy it because it's like behind the music times infinity because we've had the craziest up and down peaks and valleys story. And I think it's interesting, even if you don't know our band, but if you happen to like our band or know our band, you might especially like it. It's called A Band Called Punchline. Yes, I also host a podcast called One Hit Thunder about one-hit wonders. I produce a podcast called Chris Makes a Podcast, which is a songwriting podcast hosted by Chris from the band Less Than Jake. We have just iconic artists come on and talk about usually their biggest, most well-known song. We've had everyone from Huey Lewis to Dee Snider to Fat Mike to, people in the indie world like Liz Stokes from the Beths and one of my favorites, Verite, and like we've had a lot of punk rock episodes, but it's everything. It's called Chris Makes a Podcast. I produce that. And yes, other than Punchline, I play in two other bands. One is called Pack, P-A-C-K, which I don't know. Sometimes people call us a super group, which feels arrogant to say that myself, but I think we only say that because it's got people from bands of different genres that are kind of well known. I play in it, and also Josh Fiedler from the Juliana Theory, Scott Mellinger from Zayo. We have our singer is Kelly, who was in a band from Pittsburgh called Big Hurry back in the day. Our drummer Justin was in a band called Vesta. Just kind of people from all different types of bands play in Pack. And I play in a band called Another Cheetah, which is my friends I grew up with, and some Punchline alumni are in that band as well. So yeah, I do a lot of things. So I got that out of the way. So, sorry if that was long-winded, but it's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, so we'll put links in the show notes and in the video description so people can find those things and don't have to take notes during the intro of this video. So for anyone that's not heard this podcast before, what we do is I have a guest on and we talk to a record that guest likes, maybe loves. I don't know. We'll see. The record is supposed to be a record that is generally not very well regarded, doesn't have the greatest reputation. So I start usually by asking what exactly your relationship with the record that you've chosen is, even before revealing what the record is, although people will see the video title and stuff like that. They'll know. But is this a record that you like truly, deeply love? Is this a record that you see the badness in and just kind of have fun with it? Or what are we dealing with today?
I think it's both. I think that, yes, I really loved this album when it came out, as did my friends. I mean, I guess he's like you said, I kind of got to reveal who it is to like really get into it. We're talking about ICP. And dude, I know when you and I were going back and forth with messages, you're like, well, I guess I'm finally going to hear ICP. So I guess you have no background with the Insane Clown Posse. I kind of grew up, I heard their album Riddle Box, and at the time, I'm into punk rock music at this time. I'm a teenager, but this was so weird. It was rapping clowns. And look, I'm going to get this out of the way right now. Some of the lyrics did not age well. Okay? It was the time, man. It was just what was going on, and so I don't condone some of the stuff from these songs. But when you watch interviews with Violent J and Shaggy now, they're pretty cool guys. Like, I think they've evolved and progressed like we all have as time has gone on. But this album that I really love, Great Milkeno. It came out, I was probably 15 years old. Prime demographic for who would love this. It's just rapping clowns rapping about the Dark Carnival. This was the 4th Joker card. Each album was a Joker card. And Great Milkeno, he's a necromancer. And it's all songs about, it's things like drinking Faygo. Anyone who doesn't know what Faygo is, it's pop, soda pop. That's very popular where they were from, Detroit. I think here in Pittsburgh, we could find Faygo at the store. It's cheap pop. There's like flavors like blue and yellow and red. And they rap about their nuts a lot. I don't know what better way to put it, but they do. And they rap about smoking blunts and just craziness. It is just, I've always liked things that are really extreme, and ICP is about as extreme as it gets. So I was a target demographic. And I will note, Jason, that when I was in high school, there was a ice skating rink where I actually played hockey growing up. I grew up in a town called Belle Vernon, and we had the Rush Draver Ice Gardens, and they would have shows at the Rush Draver Gardens. I saw the Deftones play at the Rush Draver Gardens. Death Cab played at Rush Draver Gardens, and so did ICP. I remember going to that show, and anyone who doesn't know this, ICP, when they play live, they must have 50 cases of Faygo 2 liters with them. And the entire time they're shaking them up and spraying them all over the audience. So I remember getting covered in Faygo with my friends and going crazy for ICP as a teenager. So I have a major soft spot for an artist, for a duo that a lot of people like to look down on. And I have a lot of positive memories of them.
So for myself, I have one memory of hearing ICP before this, and that was being at a friend's house. We were outside playing basketball in his driveway, and he had his like boombox outside, like sitting in the garage while we were playing, and he was playing ICP. And so for some reason I distinctly remember that it was ICP, but beyond that I have no memory of the music or what it was or what I really thought of it. So this was my first real experience listening to them. It's funny that you mentioned Ross Traver Ice Garden. I went to Thomas Jefferson High School, so
okay,
I was aware of Ross Traver Ice Garden, and I never saw a show there. I might have ice skated there once.
The show sounded terrible there. It was a big iced rink or whatever. So even the best bands, it sounded very echoey and whatever. But, some cool shows did come through there when I was in high school.
So I wanted to ask you, like, how far into the world of juggalos did you go? Like, you got as far as going to a show, so that is further than maybe some. Any tattoos or?
No, I don't have a Hatchet Man tattoo. I would say I consider myself like a light juggalo in that I fell off after this album. Then I started to be like, I'm not so sure about ICP, but I completely defend juggalo culture. There was a really great, you could probably find it if you Google it, Vice did a really great article about, they went to The Gathering. Now, do you know what The Gathering is by any chance?
Yeah, I'm aware. It's it's a festival where it's basically all of the artists on their label, Psychopathic Records, I believe it's what it's called. So all these kind of like underground rap artists, but it's kind of its own genre of rap, and all the juggalos get together, and it seems like a party.
Yeah, it is a giant party. And I think juggalos get unfairly, I feel like it's really punching down when you make fun of juggalos. I feel like it's like juggalos are the easiest target, but it's just people that have found their own culture and things that they enjoy, and they come together and just have like a blast. And that was basically the whole, thesis behind this great Vice article. Is they went to The Gathering, which, by the way, I have one of my best friends, Tony Hartman, grew up in Garrettsville, Ohio. Garrettsville, Ohio, which is the equivalent of like Thomas Jefferson or Belle Vernon, a little town, a little place. That's where The Gathering originally was. So once a year, this little town just got filled with juggalos everywhere, and all the stores would have signs up like no face paint allowed and all this stuff. It was a crazy time of year. It eventually got moved to Columbus. It's in Columbus, Ohio now, I think. But just like me, Tony had this affinity for juggalos. He actually went on to make a YouTube series called Juggalo Ohio, where it really looked at like the human side of juggalos. It's really, really good, like comedy series. Yeah. Anyway, I kind of lost my train of thought about, I kind of fell off after this album, but I've always stuck up for juggalos. I consider myself still a little bit of a juggalo, even though people like to hate on. A lot of times I get in arguments with my girlfriend about like ICP versus Limp Bizkit or something like that. Both played at Woodstock 99, both like ridiculous artists. But I like ICP so much more. It's so much more fun. It's less angry and more fun, I would say.
I'm not a hip hop fan at all. I do not really care for much, if any, hip hop. But listening to this and reading about the Juggalos while I was listening to it, there is like I relate to it in the sense that I grew up a Kiss fan. And beyond just the face paint, I mean, there's that obvious comparison, but I think there's a real similarity between the two bands and their fandoms. Right. You've got the Kiss Army that follows Kiss to the end of the earth. And I think the Juggalos would do the same. And it's obviously lyrically, you might look down on both bands. Like Kiss writes exclusively about sex and women, and ICP writing about murder and rape and these kind of like weird murder fantasies and things. So I think there's parallels, and I can understand getting into ICP as an outlet and as an escape from whatever your life is.
Right.
And not necessarily looking at it as high art, but enjoying it for what it is.
Yeah, and I think you would probably notice this album, there is like a rock element to this album. There's definitely like guitars. Slash is on a song on this album. Like it definitely, it was a huge step up from their album before. Like I remember when this came out, buying it and listening to it, and it sonically, it slams. Like it really hits hard. Even now, if you listen to it through a good system, you're like, damn, this thing sounds enormous. And I think that was part of the appeal of it too, is like, yeah, it was a rap album, but it was kind of like a rock album too. It was kind of that crossover rock rap thing that was happening at the time, and done well for rapping clowns. It was done really well.
Yeah. One of my first notes here was that I was surprised by the quality of the production, and it kind of sounded like, up to par with other hip hop acts that I think of at the time. And I even hopped over to checking out like the Cypress Hill record from the year after, sure, and kind of comparing in sound quality wise. And I think it's a pretty well done production. Like you said, you got Slash on it. You also have Alice Cooper doing the like vocal intro thing, and then Steve Jones is on a track from the Sex Pistols. So yeah, it's kind of got this rock edge to it. It's not fully rap rock, I don't think. It's still predominantly hip hop, but there's guitars happening. Dude. And it was produced by Mikey Clark. I don't know if you know anything about him.
Tell me, because I know I've looked into him before, but I can't remember.
So he starts out as like an intern recording with Patti Smith.
Okay.
And then he meets Kid Rock and kind of gets pulled into this Detroit hip hop rock thing. He starts producing Kid Rock, and then of course ICP, and he would later go on to produce one of the greatest abominations of all time, which was All Summer Long, the Kid Rock track, which mashed up Warren Zevon. And
okay. Gotcha.
But he produced this record as well. And I think, his production work on this is pretty admirable for what it is. And
sure,
it's a good sounding record.
It sounds huge. Dude, did you know who released this album at first? Yeah, it didn't last long, but it was released on Hollywood Records. Disney-owned Hollywood Records released this album. It didn't last long. Some people think it was because the Southern Baptist Church protested. They claimed it was because it was an oversight by their review board, but it didn't matter. I mean, I seriously got to dig through my CDs. They're up in my attic. I got to dig through them because I think I have a Hollywood Records one that only because I got it I seriously think I got it the day it came out, but it then was released on Island Records after. But it's pretty funny that this was like a Disney property for like a few weeks.
Yeah. So I was reading about this. How is it an oversight that, first of all, that you signed ICP,
right,
and you gave them money to make a record? And then
Yes.
you heard the record. There's multiple steps where this could have been. Yeah,
dude. If they heard any of their past albums, which were even, I feel like on this one they got. Dude, there's some stuff on the Riddlebox album, the one before this, where I'm like, oh my god, I can't believe this was a thing. This one, I feel like there's probably some kind of bad stuff on this one too, but it's not nearly as bad as Riddlebox, as far as I feel like they started to get away from like some of the stuff that was especially bad. But eventually ICP became known for like the Magnets song, that one, the Magnets. How you don't know this one? It was almost like an internet meme where they had this song. I forget the name of the song. It shows you how good of a juggalo I am. I dropped off after Great Milkeno and can't remember the name of the song, but they had a song where one of the lines is "Magnets, how do they work?" And it was such a meme that it became like a Saturday Night Live skit about this ICP song. That was years and years later. But this album, man, there are some of what I still think to this day are incredible lyrics on it and incredible parts that I still absolutely respect. I marked some of them down just because I have to share, man.
Yeah.
I have to share some of.
Want to hit us with some?
Oh, I do want to hit you with some. There is a song which I'm gonna do it on here, and you might want to turn down your speakers a notch or two before I try to do this. But there is this song called "Piggy Pie," where never in my life have I heard an intro to a song that hits harder than Piggy Pie. It starts out where it's like you hear some pigs kind of oinking in the background, and you hear like a farmer maybe getting ready to slaughter a pig, I guess is what's going on, but you hear some sort of like creepy carnival sounds in the background. This goes on for maybe 20 seconds, and just, dude, to this day, when I start hearing this part, my heart starts pumping. I'm like, oh shit, because I can't imagine I always put myself in the position of being the singer in front of like 10,000 people about, any song I listen to. I don't know if you do this. Do you do this? Am I the only one that does this?
I've done this.
Yes, right. So I picture myself like in front of this crowd of juggalos just ready to explode. And there is this sound of like a shovel hitting a pig, and the pig starts squealing real loud, and then all of a sudden the music comes in. I swear to you, heavier, like that like people go crazy about like that Refused New Noise song. New Noise like comes in, get up there, you know that song?
I don't know that song.
You don't know New Noise? Oh, it's like a hardcore song, but it's even grown to the point where they played at like hockey games and stuff. It's like one of those songs. It's one of those songs that kicks in super hard. But this song, I think, kicks in even harder than that. That pig gets hit, and the guitars and everything come in so heavy, and then they come in and go, come and get it! We got some fresh fiddles for your fat chicken ass to snack on, bitch! So here, start with a slice of this fresh figgy pie, motherfucker! It's just like the heaviest, hardest hitting, screaming clowns that you've ever heard in your life. And it simultaneously makes me laugh and also makes me psyched. Like, I am psyched when I hear this intro, which it's just one of those things when people talk shit on ICP, I'm like, you got to hear Piggy Pie. Just don't talk shit till you listen to Piggy Pie. So I hope I didn't blow your eardrums out.
Actually, Zoom clamped down on that audio. I didn't hear any of it. So I'm excited when you send me the audio file on your end. I'm excited to hear what just was. It looked amazing.
I wanted to do that real bad, but that's one of my favorites. Dude, there's a song on here called Hocus Pocus, which has what I think is but yeah, it's the best ICP line, which is abracadabra, boom shakaday, I'm Violent J, and I'm back like a vertebrae, which I think is the best ever. It's in a come with a hat full of tricks, trunk full of Faygo, car full of fat chicks. Ha 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 ha. Fuck you, wicked clowns. We'd like to say what's up to, and they shout out some clown sets or whatever. But that is just everything that is ICP. Faygo, ridiculous lyrics, talking. It's always just the craziest stuff. But I absolutely love it, man.
That song, Hocus Pocus, is built on a sample. Do you know this? What?
No, I don't. What's the sample?
Is Buzzsaw by the Turtles.
Whoa. The Turtles? Like Happy Together Turtles? Dude, I did not know that. I want to hear the original.
Yeah, check that out. So yeah, you kind of touched on the whole Baptist church thing and the outrage over it. And it just... reading about that took me back to the 90s and being a kid. And maybe it was because I was a kid and younger and, more innocent. But that felt like a real era of like shock rock happening.
Oh, yeah.
And it seemed like everything had a parental advisory sticker on it. And it was like a big deal to drop F-bombs in your music. It felt like you had like 9 Inch Nails with tracks like Closer and...
the best
Marilyn Manson at the time.
Sure.
It was such a thing. There seemed to be so many artists doing the shock rock type of thing, and ICP fell into that. And also ICP felt way more like closer to the mainstream than they are now. They've kind of, I don't know, they're like this separate entity that almost seems to like exist outside of the music industry.
Yeah.
But at the time, they were just like another act that, vying for the same attention that all the other ones were. Right.
I mean, like I said, they played at Woodstock 99. If you look at the lineup of that, it's all huge artists. I mean, it was debauchery. It was a mess, but they were, on that bill with Korn and whoever else was on it. And dude, you brought up the parental advisory sticker. Was there ever a better sales technique than having the parental advisory? When I was a kid, I saw that parental advisory sticker made me want it more. Of course. I remember, do you remember what your first album was you ever got that had a parental advisory on it? I remember what mine was.
I'm not sure, but I remember I got an Ozzy Osbourne live album. It was a 2-disc, I forget what it was called, Live and Loud or something. And in between every single track, he would be like, go fucking crazy. And I was like, this is a lot of F-bombs. Maybe I felt too young for it. Like I knew, I was like, this is too much for me.
Right. I remember, well, actually there are 2 that I got that I can't remember which came first, but I got the Adam Sandler They're All Gonna Laugh at You comedy album, which, by the way, I just found out that album sold 2 million copies. A comedy album that sold 2 million copies. It's insane. And I also got that Red Hot Chili Peppers Blood Sugar Sex Magic was the other first parental advisory sticker when I got. But dude, you're totally right about the shock rock at this time. I mean, I was huge 9 Inch Nails fan, man. I just talking to somebody about this yesterday too. That Downward Spiral album, just I still think it's one of the greatest albums ever made. And yeah, at the time I liked Marilyn Manson. Kind of fell off on Marilyn Manson pretty quick after that first album, but it was I gravitate towards the extreme. And now, music tastes evolve, and people don't know me. They probably think I have the worst taste in music, but judging by I'm talking about, I love the ICP, I love whatever. But like, I like to think I have pretty good taste in music. I'm a Beatles, Ben Folds, Bjork. Like that's my music taste in a nutshell. But I love extreme things, especially the live show. Getting to see ICP live was a big part of it too, man. So, and like you said, they were kind of in the public eye, in the mainstream in this era, but they have become their own. So they have this giant cult following. They put out their own records now. They don't need the mainstream. These guys could put out music forever and put on their own festivals. And I think that's awesome. As an artist, that's what, like, I think that's the ultimate, to be able to say like, oh, we don't need, who cares about labels? Who cares about radio? It doesn't matter. we're huge. We've created this community. It's almost like the Grateful Dead, or, Grateful Dead and Fish, like the jam band scene, or anyone who's been able to maintain that giant cult following, and ICP is just like the poster boys for that.
Yeah, for sure. So did you go back and listen to it this week?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I didn't even need to. I've heard it recently. Yeah. I mean, I've listened to it recently.
So you feel it holds up still, even it's not just nostalgia coloring your opinion of it?
I'm sure to a certain extent there is nostalgia glasses with this. I wonder if I never heard it before. I wonder if I came from your perspective and heard this for the first time, if I would think it's cool or not. I mean, probably lean towards no, but I think I would still respect the production value. I would still respect the fact that it's rapping clowns. And I got to talk about the last track on this album, which is a song called Pass Me By, which is, for ICP, a pretty deep song about like how, from the first person perspective, he gets shot and killed. Of course, famous line is, I got shot. The murder was heinous. The bullet went in my eyeball and out my anus. Of course, they had to get the anus in the lyrics. But when you dive into the lyrics, it's about how when you die, you go to this carnival where you see all your friends, all your homies that passed away. They pass you a blunt like a tree trunk. You have a giant mansion. You have a maid who when you cough, she come and dust your balls off, which I don't know what that means, but it's just their fantasy about what happens when you die. And it's in their own way, it's pretty beautiful. I gotta say, I remember like as a teenager, I probably just got my driver's license. I remember driving with my friend and bandmate Steve and listening to this song. And I don't know if I'm mashing memories together. I probably am. It's probably two separate times. But I remember that we had watched a Faces of Death. Did you ever watch a Faces of Death?
I was aware of Faces of Death, and I don't know if we ever had like the VHS, but I remember watching some of those clips online at some point. Yeah. So maybe I was a few years late on the actual videos, but yeah, I definitely saw some of those.
If you haven't, don't. It's completely unnecessary to watch it, but I think when you're young, and especially at this time, we didn't have the internet at this time. I mean, maybe by high school I did, but there wasn't all this stuff on, when to be able to just at my fingertips on my phone or whatever. So you had to like get a videotape at the store to watch it. And it was just like, I don't know, that sort of sick, dark, curiosity when you're young that I am not curious about at all anymore. It's the furthest thing from my mind. But I remember like watching that and then having this horrible feeling of malaise over me of like, I don't know if that's the first time I like thought about dying and it seemed very tangible or something. Just a terrible feeling that I hated. And I remember listening to this song and having this this sounds so ridiculous when in relation to ICP, but just having this thought of like, oh, maybe when you die, you do go to this carnival and it's good. It's this great thing. You have this mansion or whatever. Once again, I might be smashing some memories together, but those are two things that come to mind when I think about this Pass Me By song, which in its own way, in its juggalo sort of way, I think is a very beautiful song.
So yeah, the whole thing is a concept. It's a series of concept records. I don't know if we fully explained that you talked about the Joker cards and that, but it's all about the afterlife, and it's kind of like this limbo that is a carnival. Mm-hmm. I don't know that I fully understand what they're trying to say with the concept, but it is a pretty cool idea.
Right. Yeah, it's like another plane of existence or whatever. And like I said, I fell off after Great Milkeno. There were each album was a Joker card, and then obviously this was the fourth one, and there were two more Joker cards that came out in subsequent years. And I think that after the 6th Joker card, it was supposed to be like the end of the world, if I'm remembering correctly, something like that. It was the apocalypse. That obviously didn't happen, and they went on to release the song about what the hell is that song? That's going to drive me crazy. I can't remember the name of that song. But also they had like the song Homies, which is like a goofy, upbeat, funny song about hanging out with your homies. Homies. Yeah, I'm talking about homies. It's just, kind of silly, but kind of fun. And then also, man, there were lots of, like you alluded to earlier, the other psychopathic records artists like Twisted, spelled TWIZTID, and House of Crazies and all. I never was even slightly interested in something that was, ICP adjacent. I just liked ICP, the original IP of it. That's all I really cared about and liked, and have this soft spot in my heart even today for not only Violent J and Shaggy 2 Dope, but also for the entire culture. Because to throw it back to that Vice article I was talking about, they went to the gathering, and basically they were saying what I'm saying is like, juggalos are the people that they get made fun of. Why do you think they became juggalos? It was probably people that felt like outsiders, and they found a community of people that were like them, that were different, and they could go and be themselves. I mean, that's awesome, man. That's amazing. So you have this giant festival, the gathering, and when you're walking into the gathering, there's a bridge where you cross over into it. It's called the drug bridge. And on the drug bridge, you can buy any drug you want. Like, you could buy it right there on the bridge, and you go into the gathering and you could do what you want. It's kind of like, I don't want to say above, but like the cops leave it alone, and I think that's kind of cool. And in their reporting, they just saw like, hey, we saw kind of crazy shit in here. We saw naked, gross looking people, and we saw all kind of weird shit, but there wasn't violent. It was like people were cool to each other. It was a celebration, and people were having fun, and it was really, really cool. So that's kind of how I feel about the juggalo culture too, is like, hey, it's people doing their thing. If it ain't your thing, that's fine, but you don't have to look down on it so hard, I
always had this perception that the juggalos were a little crazier than that. And I was reading about it today. There is a faction apparently that is kind of violent, and like the FBI classifies them as a gang, and how much of that is just like hyperbole and things being blown out of proportion? Do you know anything about any of the more violent faction of the juggalos?
So the FBI categorizing juggalos as a gang thing was a big deal. Like, they fought against that really hard. I recently like looked into this. I was like a podcast where ICP came up, and so I think they actually won the case and got juggalos declassified. I don't think they're considered a gang. Okay. And I think that's all falsehood. No, I shouldn't say all. Look, do you want to name any fandom ever? I mean, that doesn't have somebody in it that's violent or terrible? Like, any fan or of it, My Little Pony fandom, I'm sure there's a few murderer bronies out there, I'm sure, like any fandom of anything, you're going to have the exceptions. So if someone shot somebody and they were wearing an ICP shirt, that doesn't mean that all juggalos are violent. I think there must have been something that happened. Just the same way of like, when Columbine happened, they really came down on Marilyn Manson, 9 Inch Nails, anything. They came down on the music, when in fact it's not the music. I don't think so anyway. I think that to a certain extent, if someone's listening to the music, it's a release. They say Eminem too. It's another example, which, okay, I can admit, I don't know where I fall on this. I don't believe in censorship, obviously, but then you have like that Eminem Kim song. You have like Tupac Hit 'Em Up. These songs are extremely violent songs. Like, they are really, but can you correlate that 1-to-1 to what someone does? I don't think so. You could turn on your TV and see violence nonstop on the news nonstop, so I don't know. That's a whole other discussion, but I don't think that juggalos are violent. I think they rap about violence in a sort of almost cartoonish, outlandish way. But I think when you go into a gathering or you go to an ICP show or you talk to a juggalo, all you get is like good vibes and people that want to have a good time.
Yeah, when you first sent the text that this was the record that you were choosing, my first thought was like, if I don't like this and I go hard in the paint against it, like this my life might be in danger. But once I actually heard it and read more about juggalos and stuff, I felt like, you know what, this is fantasy. This is like comic books. This is,
yes.
I don't really see quite why they were classified as a gang.
That's a perfect analogy, man. This is like the equivalent of someone who's really into like WWE wrestling or comic books or whatever. It's a fun fandom. It's almost like cosplay. You put your face paint on, and I know some people kind of live their life with the juggalo lifestyle, but I don't think they're in clown makeup every day. I think maybe the clown makeup just comes out for the gathering or the show or whatever. So, I shouldn't say that. I'm sure there's some people that do live the juggalo lifestyle every single day, and I don't. You know what? I celebrate it. I encourage it. I think it's really, really cool.
Getting back to what you said about the Adam Sandler record selling 2 million copies, did you know that this was a platinum record?
Yeah, that's pretty badass.
Yeah, it debuted at number 62 on the Billboard charts, which is impressive, but also that an album that peaks at number 62 could also be a platinum record.
Exactly.
By today's standards, seems preposterous.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the 90s were such a time for record sales. When we do One Hit Thunder or whatever, we're always like looking at the sales and we're like, oh my God, this is crazy. Aerosmith Get a Grip sold 20 million copies. That's insane because, as you probably know, or you may have seen the recent articles, this year actually is the first year that vinyl overtook CD sales. Like CDs are that dead that vinyl overtook the sales of them. Not that vinyl hasn't been on a giant boom for years and years now, but it's still crazy that it finally surpassed it. But I guess it's not that crazy because I don't know. I'm doing this on a Mac that doesn't have a CD drive. People don't even have CD drives in their cars or anything anymore, so it's not that surprising to me, I guess.
CDs are going to come back too, though.
You think?
It's already starting, yeah. I've seen articles about the return of CDs, and it's happening. It's going to happen. Cassettes, too. Cassettes are coming back. I've been to shows where the artists only are selling the cassettes, so...
Well, the cassette thing, I think, got a little boom because of Stranger Things or whatever. The cassette thing's always like a novelty. CDs, though... I hope you're right, because honestly, for years and years of touring, we were able to like pay for our gas in hotels by selling CDs at the merch table. Even if you sold them for $5, we, sold thousands and thousands of CDs on the road and were able to sustain ourselves by selling CDs. Then that went away. Then it was like, okay, you could still sell merch, but the CD thing was always like I don't know. That was like an ace up your sleeve for being able to afford the tour and stuff. So I hope you're right.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about CDs, though. I kind of don't understand why they would come back. You've got all the music in your phone. If you want the physical object, don't you want the bigger vinyl with the artwork? Like, what role is CD filling that? I don't know.
A smaller version of that, a smaller, less expensive version than that of that. And dude, I know because my band has vinyl on order. You gotta, as an artist, you gotta have your vinyl ordered a full year in advance now. That's how backed up, because there's only like a few plants that do it in the world. So when you have giant artists like Taylor Swift pressing 1 million copies of their album on vinyl, that's using it all up, So you got to plan like a year ahead. In the meantime, you can release it on the streaming sites, but to have the records in hand, you got a year of waiting, which that could be a reason that maybe CDs would come back if people want a physical, smaller version. But yeah, I don't really see it coming back unless people have something to play them on again.
Yeah, without it on your computer, and they're not putting them really in cars anymore. So,
right.
But yeah, that's and that's the Great Millenko. You got anything else you want to say about? You have a final selling point for people that still aren't buying into it?
Look, I don't think I would be able to sell someone on like, dude, you gotta check out the Great Millenko. You gotta, but I think I could sell someone on, don't turn your nose up at juggalos so hard. You know, I feel like there are fandoms that are way worse than juggalos, or I just think that it's a sect of people, of music fans, that really get a bad rap that don't really deserve it. And for what it is, to a certain extent, it's a novelty. To some people, it's a way of life. ICP are pretty good. I will say they are the best rapping clowns on earth. That's my selling point.
You've convinced me. I agree. They are the best rapping clowns on earth. All right. Well, thanks for coming on and doing the show. It was a lot of fun. Even if I had to listen to the Great Millenko to do it.
You can talk shit if you want. I'm not offended. You know, I know. Yeah.
I kind of feel like the pitch you just gave. Like, I feel like musically wasn't really into it, but I respect the production on it. I think it was well made and well done. And as a Kiss fan, I totally get where this fandom is coming from and why you might buy into this thing. And if it speaks to you, that's cool. And yeah, I'm not. I won't be so harsh on the juggalos anymore.
Love it. I love that I could do that for you.
All right. Well, let us know what you think of this record if you've heard it.
Oh man. I can't wait to see the comments, man. I'm going to reply to these comments too. Cause I can't imagine they're going to be great, but we'll see.
Drop your thoughts down in the comments. Chris will be there checking them out and responding to every one of them. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, review, rate, all that stuff. Check the description for links to all of Chris's stuff. And thanks again. We'll see you in the next one.